Hello, welcome to this week's sketchbook tour. This week it's going to be a character sketchbook, much like a few weeks ago. This one is my most recent one, so there's lots of blank pages. I've not quite finished this sketchbook, but I thought it might be quite nice to sort of make these videos more recent things that I've been working on, rather than looking back at old sketchbooks, although I will do that from time to time if it's been a slow week. And it's been kind of a slow week this week. I've not managed as much as I probably wanted to, but I'll be getting back on top of that next week. So anyway, so these characters, there's only two characters that I've been working on in this book so far. Rudy and Goon. This one's Rudy. They're all from my upcoming comic, Scrambled Eggs, which again I've mentioned before. And like before, I've not used any references in these drawings, so sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. There's always going to be wobbly bits, things that are a bit uncanny, but I like to sort of push myself and see what's working, what isn't working, what I need to work on in terms of studies, and also what I've managed to learn from the studies I've been doing. So I always enjoy drawing without references much more than actually study. So I always feel like this is dessert, let's say. This is where I get to have a bit more fun. And yeah, so in essence, these are also sort of concept sketches. So I'm playing around with how the character looks, styles. So at the minute, or at the beginning of this book, they're a little bit more realistic, let's say. And I kind of want to meet sort of like a happy medium between stylized and real for this book. And I've not quite got there yet, so it's going to take a little bit more playing around with things. And also in terms of the outfits and fashions, so this one in particular is roughly based on Akira, Tetsuo's motorbike jacket and boots and stuff. Recently rewatched it and thought it might be quite fun to replicate that in some sense. And I imagine that's probably a Michael Jackson style jacket or something. But that sort of Easter egg mentality is kind of thread into the story as well, so it makes sense. It's not just me throwing things in there for the sake of sort of nodding and winking to people. They live in a world which has been very much informed by our fiction, as I've mentioned before, and partly one of the reasons it's called Scrambled Eggs is because I'm going to be playing around with the idea of art imitating life, as in Da Vinci's flying machines, and then then we end up with planes. That took too long to remember what a plane was. And then Star Trek, their little communicators, and we end up with mobile phones. And it's not cut and dry as that, but we seem to get a lot from our science fiction without the moral implications of those stories. Not that planes are necessarily bad, or mobile phones, but it seems to be more so than ever in a very nostalgic period in terms of our entertainment or broadest culture, let's say. We get a lot of rehashes, we get a lot of remakes, a lot of franchises, and it does seem to filter somewhat into our culture, or it does eventually. And I'm taking that to its very much extreme. So in this world that I've created, there are scientific advancements. There is a matrix, there is cloning, there is robotics to some extent, and they all sort of harpen back to a lot of those things that we see in Star Wars, that we see in Jurassic Park, that we see in, like I say, The Matrix or Blade Runner, or so it's. But I'm hoping to weave something that's a little bit more imaginative out of those things. And again, they're only nods. This is only how the world's built. It's not necessarily what the story's about, let's say. So yeah, this is Rudy. He is part of a partnership with a character called Goon, who comes up in a minute. Sorry. And yeah, he's got some secrets, and him and Goon, they are that's Goon. They do all the dirty work for the elite people of the city. There's this big futuristic city that resides inside of a mountain, and there's obviously some dirty work to do. So they keep people quiet, or they get rid of people, or and it's all in the hope of a better future for them. So they're very morally grey, and they're not always the nicest of people, but they do have a very sort of, let's say, brotherly bond, or even like a father-son bond. And yeah, to me, they're not overly unlikable either, but they do some questionable things, let's say, or they have had done. And they're not necessarily main characters, but the things that they do at the beginning of the story, the first chapter and the first issue, does inform the rest of the story. And yeah, they're sort of anti-heroes to a degree, or partly they're kind of the antagonists, but they're also not. Like I say, I think I've mentioned before, it's quite a morally grey story. There's a lot of good and bad, and somewhere in between in a lot of these characters. So, and I think Rudy and Goon sort of they are the embodiment of that in a lot of ways. Well, that's what I hope. Obviously, in the first story, you're only just getting to know them, and these things take time to establish. And I'm not necessarily a writer, so I'm trying my best. But in terms of the designs, I am getting more and more happy with them. I can say a little bit more cartoony. I want to simplify things, because obviously I've got to draw these characters again and again and again, and trying to give a little bit more life to them in terms of the poses. Again, that's me sort of trying to figure out what it is I've learned over the last couple of weeks, because I've done a lot of gesture work and seen what's managed to sort of seep in. And there's plenty of things I need to work on. I mean, his head is massive, but then again, that could be a stylistic choice. But when it comes to sort of the pose, it's a little bit more natural than what I've typically been doing. And this one where he's sort of frolicking almost somewhere, which is something he probably wouldn't do, but it's always sort of fun to play around. And back to this page, which is, I think, probably my favourite. I mean, there's lots of little areas where I went a bit wrong, but it's a sketch at the end of the day, and I'm not too precious about it. But yeah, that's Goon and Rudy, and that's the end of this book. So hopefully by the end of next week I'll have it all filled up. I've started working on clothed figures, because I've been doing a lot of gesture work, but I want to really nail down or get a better understanding of clothes and how they work, because this isn't too bad, but I know there's little subtle things that I can throw in there that'll really boost it. And then after that, I'd like to do a little bit more landscape studies and concepts. It's something that I really don't work on enough. Yeah, and all the other little things, the technologies and all of that sort of stuff, vehicles, and they're all things that I'm not so used to drawing. So that would be quite fun, if not a little bit intimidating. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Sorry. Yeah, I plan to really double down next week. I've been quite busy this week, so I've not managed to do half as much as I wanted to, but it's all a good start. The drafts have begun in terms of the comic, so the few people that I've mentioned, I'll send a sort of a draft copy off to. They'll hopefully be receiving it in the next couple of weeks. I've got a new sketchbook that I plan to actually draw other people's characters in as a means to study. So, Hellboy and things from Studio Ghibli, and just characters from popular fiction as a means to understand how to simplify things, as well as double down a bit on my how I design things, because a lot of this is very instinctual that I do, so I feel like it'd be a good thing to practice, and it'll be quite fun. So that's something else that I plan to do next week. So it might be that next week I'll have a sketchbook filled with, Batman or something. So we'll see. But that's it for now. I hope to see you next week. Thanks for watching if you've made it this far. And if you want to see more, check out my social media. It's all linked down in the description. And yeah, that's it. My endings are always so long, aren't they? Right, I am going now. Hope you have a good week, and I'll see you around. Toodaloo.